Hi, welcome to Micro 171.
G7 nations have failed to agree on a proposal by Britain for sanctions against Russia in the wake of a deadly chemical attack they say was carried out by Moscow's ally, Syria. Italy's foreign minister said the group did not want to back Russia into a corner and preferred dialogue. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has moved on from the G7 meeting in Italy and has arrived in Moscow for talks. He insisted Syria's president could not play a part in the country's future. The G7 meeting in the Italian city of Lucca followed last week's chemical attack on the rebel-held Syrian town of Khan Sheikhoun that left 89 people dead. The Turkish health ministry on Tuesday confirmed that the nerve agent, sarin, had been used. Syria denied the attack, but the U.S. then carried out a retaliatory strike, firing 59 cruise missiles at a Syrian airbase. What happened at the G7? The two-day meeting of foreign ministers was aimed at hammering out a unified approach to Syria before Mr. Tillerson headed to Moscow. But divisions arose as UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson proposed sanctions against Syrian and Russian military figures over the chemical attack. BBC diplomatic correspondent James Robbins says Mr. Johnson had hoped for some form of explicit support, but the final G7 communiqué does not mention sanctions. Italian Foreign Minister Angelino Alfano said ministers wanted to engage with Russia. "We think the Russians have the leverage that is needed to put pressure on President Bashar al-Assad and to get him to observe the commitments with regard to the ceasefire," he said. Mr. Johnson denied he had suffered a defeat, saying there was support for sanctions if further evidence of the chemical attack were gathered. One thing that did appear to unite the group was the future of Mr. Assad. Mr. Tillerson summed it up, saying, "It is clear to all of us that the reign of the Assad family is coming to an end." He also won support over the retaliatory strike, which he called necessary as a matter of U.S. national security interest. "We do not want the regime's uncontrolled stockpile of chemical weapons to fall into the hands of ISIS, so-called Islamic State, or other terrorist groups who could and want to attack the United States or our allies," he said. There were some conciliatory messages ahead of his arrival, with Moscow hoping for constructive cooperation with Washington. Mr. Putin hinted at this himself, saying that although Russia and Syria were being portrayed as the common enemy of the West, "We are ready to tolerate this," and he added, "We hope that this will nonetheless lead to some kind of positive cooperation trend." He also called for the UN to hold an independent investigation into the chemical attack. Reports on Monday had quoted a senior U.S. official as saying that the Russians knew of the chemical attack because a drone had been flying over a hospital in Khan Sheikhoun as victims sought help. Any such assertion on this trip is likely to strain ties. Subscribe to my channel, thanks.